Terry Daniher is one of football's all-time greats.
Not only have I got a lot of respect, I think anyone that's followed football during the time that Terry's been playing has a lot of respect for Terry. If you were to ask or canvass the guys on who's been the greatest player or one of the greatest players since they've been playing, I would say that a high percentage of them would say Terry Daniher. And it's not because he's blessed with a lot more natural ability than anyone else. It's just the fact that his determination, his commitment, and the fact that he always kept his eyes on the ball.
He is admired on the ground for his tenacity, his teamwork and his brilliance.
He's a very dedicated player. I mean, you really want and hope that all your young players in the club would look at the way he trains. He just puts head down and right into it. And of course, I mean, he actually gives a commentating performance when he trains sometimes, and I think we all get that bit of humour out of him. So even now that he's probably not captain and Tim is, we just admire him from that point of view. That young bloke, gee, this guy doesn't stop at 33.
In a game that has become like showbiz, Terry Daniher offers an example of how hard work and dedication remains an integral part of what's required to make it in the big time.
Terry's his philosophy on footy is pretty simple, and work hard and get the best out of yourself that you can. And it's been great sort of playing and training with him. Probably has helped me out as a footballer, just being around him and training with him a lot.
From the tiny river in the town of Ungary came a raw-boned boy named Terry Daniher, who they say could play the game a little bit. One of 4 boys and 7 sisters brought up by Jim and Edna Daniher, Terry had the classic bush upbringing of hard work, sport and a good feed. But even as a youngster, Terry Daniher knew what he wanted to be, and that was an AFL footballer.
Our headmasters at school, taught us a game of rugby league, and it was our parents really, my father and my mates' parents, and that come in there midweek and said to the principal, "Hey son, you've got to learn to play Australian rules football as well." So that's how we learnt the code.
Well, obviously the family's pretty entrenched in the football. Dad, Jim up there, how much of an influence did he have on the career early doors?
Oh, he had a very big influence, I suppose, in playing the game himself, and, and he took us to the football, and, coming from a small community like Hungary, it only had a population of 400 or 500, and I think it was just every player, all my mates certainly played football, and it was just great to go along, and you'd be having a kick at half time when he was out there playing football, Dad-like, and I guess when you were old enough to play, you started.
As is the case in most country towns, sport often is the major focus on the weekend. And so it was in Hungary, where one day a bloke would be your opponent and the next your teammate.
We'd get out, you'd play against your opposing side on the Saturday and get stuck into it, and then you'd be scrumming together on the Sunday, because out of those 5 sides in the rules competition up there, it formed a rugby league side, which was a bit stronger competition. They picked from 5 towns, and you'd be scrumming down with one another. Your opponent, you worked, you battled hard against the day before.
But it was on the Daniher farm at age 15 that the Terry Daniher story could have quite easily have ended. At just 15 years of age, Terry was doing what most boys his age do on a farm when the front gate is 2 kilometres from the house. He was giving his brother and sisters a lift to the gate, when in a freak moment, fate dealt Terry Daniher a winning hand.
We lived about a mile from the main road, and we give away riding the bikes. We thought, well, this particular day it was pretty wet, and we thought, well, I'll take the ute down, and just drove it down and went to school. It was time to come home. Well, I pulled it around, and the kids were waiting in the bike shed to keep out of the wet weather, and we jumped in, and just as we were ready to go, bang, down come this tree. I think there was probably 5 or 6 of us, and but very lucky that the tree sort of come down the back of the roof of the ute, and it pushed 3 or 4 of them out the front, but I was pinned, and my sister was looking out the back nearly on the seat, and she got a head caught, but we were both very, very lucky not to have been more seriously hurt.
How far that must have seemed in 1983, when the new era of bomber domination was beginning to build. After finishing 5th in 1981 and 1982, the Bombers were again faced with an elimination final match in 1983. Only this time, Essendon broke through. And before long, they were trying to become the first team in league history to win the grand final, coming from 5th place. Though Essendon was handed out a record 83-point hiding by Hawthorn, it stands out as the year the Bombers found out they had what it took to win a finals match but showed that hard work was needed to make that ultimate step.
In the 83 season, we went right through to the grand final and got beaten pretty badly by Hawthorn, but you could feel that we'll get gaining confidence, and things just fell into place with getting players like Leon Baker and Paul Weston across. It was just fill in a couple of key spots for us, and it was what we needed. We were very lucky to have got those couple of players, and as I say, the rest is history, I guess.
1984 saw the Bombers on a roll, and again it was Hawthorn in the grand final. Despite having 2 shots for goal more than Hawthorn, inaccuracy saw the Bombers trail 5-15-45 to the Hawks 10-8-68 at three-quarter time, a margin of 23 points. And most in the crowd, even the most ardent Essendon supporters, believed that Hawthorn was set for back-to-back wins against Essendon.
I think it's just a matter of going out and getting on with it. As a lot of people say, and I've heard it so many times, anything can happen in finals, providing you keep your head down and you persevere with it. And the players did just that, and kept chipping away at it with the thought of the 83 final in the back of our minds. I think probably helped us to keep working away at it.
It's history now that coach Kevin Sheedy made numerous moves at three-quarter time. Simon Madden and Darren Williams began to dominate the centre. Paul Weston and Bill Duckworth were switched to the forward line, and all of a sudden the Bombers were on the march.
Daniher, yeah, the mark. He'll be within kicking distance. He's on a pretty fair angle, and the umpire bringing him further around. But he should get the distance without any trouble at all. Daniher. Kick is an awkward-looking one. For Essendon or a Hawthorn mark? Merritt's got it. Would have to fall over to miss it. He's on the goal line, so it will be his first goal of the day. And Essendon lead by 5 points. So the scoreboard, Essendon 10 goals, 19-79. Hawthorn 11-8, 74.
Daniher knocked on. There's a Garnell for Weston. He's put it through for a goal. What a match winner this guy's been at centre-half forward. There's Weston again with a hand pass. Coming over to Watson. This could be another goal. It is. Oh, they're killing them. And Essendon look like winning their first Premiership since 1965.
Daniher knocks it under Merritt, or trying to find Merritt, but Watson's there instead. They're running right away. There's another one. If he's accurate, I think he's dobbed it. It's Essendon's flag. No doubt about it. Portman from the point of the square has gone for a pass, and that's beautifully delivered right down the throat of Merv Neagle. Lead in pursuit. Neagle gets his kick in long and high to the goal square, and look at that. That really is the sealer if ever there needed to be one.
It was a terrific feeling. It's pretty hard to describe. I think it's just, especially I was in the switch there when Paul Weston went to the half forward. I went back to the back line, and they had a lot of the play up there in the last quarter, and yeah, it certainly was a big buzz.
But just as victory was assured, Daniher made a mistake he would have had to live with for the rest of his life.
I remember one incident in the grand final late there. It could have nearly cost us a game. There was an instance there where I think that there was a free kick or something paid, and I remember soccering the ball down just to use up a bit more time, and I can remember Shane Hurd was just behind me. Don't kick it, he yelled out. But it was too late. I'd sort of gone through with the kick and I was penalised 15 metres, and it put Peter Curran within range to shoot a goal, and I think that might have just put him back in front. It was getting on between time on period, and so that was pretty upsetting. You can imagine the things that were going through my mind at that particular moment of time.
It was only a temporary setback as Essendon recorded its first win since 1965, defeating Hawthorn 14-21-105 to 12-9-81. Essendon slamming on 60 points in the final term to just 13, and a lifetime ambition to stand on the MCG as captain of a Premiership side had been achieved.
I don't think you ever sort of feel you have it won. You just sort of you just got to keep working until the siren. It's just a big relief to hear the siren, because I think there's players. It's a big season, and it's very hard to play the season out, and you come to the grand final, and every player on the ground sort of gives his all, and I think it's just it's a feeling of relief, you know, when the siren has gone and you're fortunate enough to be on top. It's a memory you'll always cherish.
It was a great feeling, swamping Hawthorn to steal the '84 Premiership. Better was still to come the very next year. The all-conquering side of 1985 is regarded by many experts as one of the greatest teams ever to play the game. They say it takes a great team to win a flag, but a champion team to make it back-to-back. And that is what happened in 1985, as the rampaging Bombers were simply the class team of the year. Fast, skillful, young and aggressive, and tough. From the word go, nothing was going to stop this Terry Daniher-led side.
Salmon has taken the mark, but it will be allowed. Play on call, he does. Up towards half forward, in front is Langford. At the back is now Bloke.
Kelly got one going by that time.
He hasn't missed that one. That will seal it well and truly for the 85 flag, and the Essendon players know that. In towards the 10-metre square, Salmon and Mew, no mark for either player. Baker, left foot snapshot, that'll be close. He's dogged it, I think. That's a goal. Great play.
Hanley taps it onto the hands of Daniher. A long hand pass over to Harvey. This could be a goal. The little fella straightens up and fires. It's a goal for the Bombers again. You can put the Premiership flag in the bag now.
Harvey's kick up towards trying to find Daniher. Chance for Billy Duckworth to score a goal, and he does. And Billy's pretty happy about it. Big pack of players down there. It rebounds to Watson. He has a ping at the goals and has put it through for another one. It's academic, of course.
Merritt taking his time. Lets it go. And that is a goal. It's goal number 5. So it's 22 goals, 146 Essendon.
Daniher at the back. Picked up by Walsh. Scoops it out. In fact, almost throws it out to Wellshaw, but the umpire, that was a throw. Clark. Clark, long kick, looking for Daniher. Duckworth. Izzard. Shouldn't hit him on the head, the ball. Got a good turn of speed, the little redhead. Has a shot at the goals again, and he's done it. Great goal.
Williams going for goal number 2, and of course a big chance to put him 72 points in front, and that's right, it's right through the middle for a goal. He's driving it up to Big Salmon. Can he grab this one? The pack fly, there's too many. That could be Harvey kicking this one. He got it through.
I'm just proud to be part of it because in '85 I just felt we were just that confident, you know, like even from the word go, from the start of the season, that we just had that probably a little bit of arrogance about us, that we thought we could just grab a game, you know, and win a game from wherever. You know, if we were down at any particular stage, we could sort of just get up and grab it back. It was just the confidence that we had in the side.
Just as Kevin Sheedy and his team did plenty of work to achieve their ultimate goal in 1985, Terry Daniher had to do an enormous amount just to be in a position to play league football. It all started back in 1976, when Terry Daniher was recruited to the Big Smoke to the then South Melbourne Football Club by former Swans champion Ricky Quaid. But it wasn't easy coming from a tight rural town and a close-knit family to the harsh, cold Melbourne area, and a team where no one was willing to give anyone a break.
A lot of good players, and again, it was pretty tough. And I don't think, you know, a lot of those players were, you know, they didn't give you a real good, they weren't real friendly early. And I think it wasn't until you sort of went through that bit of initiation period that, hey, this kid might be able to play a little bit, that you sort of, they started, you'd get on a little bit better with them. But, you know, it was pretty tough.
And where temptation in the big city wasn't too far away to entice a young country boy like a lost Ungary sheep astray.
Instead of getting into town once, or, you know, up home, you'd get in there probably on the weekends when you played footy, and you'd get down after the game, you'd play, and you'd get down to the pub and have a few beers. But you could get out any time of the week, literally, down here in Melbourne. And the guys like to get out, and they enjoyed yourself. I suppose you do that when you're young, and it didn't take me long to get caught up in that side of things, enjoying life a little bit more. But as far as my football went, it's just sort of a bit of a case of you not knowing whether you're good enough. You're sort of a bit eerie in that regard. You sort of held everything in high esteem. You know, everyone, the player alongside you that had been playing with them was that much better than you, and it took a while to really to gather up confidence, I suppose it was. You didn't really think you were good enough.
Terry Daniher from 30 metres. Drop punt kick, holds up in the breeze, but it gets the distance and it's straight.
Terry Daniher on the left foot. He bounces it towards goal. How's it going to bounce? Still makes his ground well to pick the ball up. Finally views to Daniher. Hooks it across his body. Beautiful snapshot. That's going pretty close. And he's put it through.
Brownless is caught, dispossessed. Buick's short kick. Terry Daniher from 50 metres. Long drop punt will go through. Yes!
Kick by Matt, the half forward. Terry Daniher pulls in a good one. In the half. Centering kick. Some height needed here. They've got Daniher in front who takes the great punt. Daniher going for goal number 2. Stabs at it. And it's there.
Great for Izzard. Izzard with a long hand pass to the skipper, Terry Daniher. He balks nicely, straightens up and fires at the goal. That's a great goal by the skipper.
I don't think anyone can forget their first game. Mine was against Hawthorn out at Princes Park. I got a call. I was staying with some people living in a hotel at the time with some people, and I got a call about, must have been close to midnight, that Normie Gossett pulled out through injury, and I got the opportunity to play the game. They selected me in the seniors there for that day, a boggy old wet day, and playing on a chap on the halfback flank called Ian Bremner, and he was pretty good to me that particular day. He got up on my shoulders to try to take a couple of screamers, and I got a couple of free kicks, and didn't set the world on fire, but it was good. It was good to get out there.
After showing signs of better things to come, South Melbourne had already made up its mind that former Essendon star centreman Neville Fields was a far better proposition. But before a deal had been made with Essendon, Daniher's name was floated around the traps by South to see if there were any interested parties. And while the football world knew that Daniher was up for sale, Terry was oblivious until a stranger called.
We had Haycart in a home at the time, and it was back about November or early December, and we had Kevin Dixon, I think was the promotions officer at Fitzroy at the time, arrived up on our doorsteps, and we come home with a truckload of hay, and here's this bloke parked under the pepper tree, sound asleep, and Mum had been in to do some shopping, and I said, the old man was a bit wary. He wasn't too sure who this fella was. He had Vic number plates on. We woke him up, banged on the roof, and said, "What are you doing up here, son? You know, what's going on?" And it turned out to be Kevin, and you know, to cut a long story short, he said that I would be interested in obtaining your services, and I said, "Well, you know, what's going on here?" And they said, "Haven't you heard yet? South Melbourne are, giving you the flick, I suppose." So that's how I first got wind of it. And but a little bit further down the track, when I come to South Melbourne, and they sort of hummed and hawed a little bit for a while and said, "Oh, we want you to stay, but we're looking for a couple of other players." And I think that's virtually the way. I could see the writing on the wall, I suppose you could say, and I was just fortunate, I guess, that Fitzroy gave me the opportunity, and a little bit further down the track, so did Essendon. They come and wanted to have a chat to us, and I just sort of picked Essendon, not for any real reason other than, Barry Daves had just taken over his coach, and sort of always known Barry to be a pretty good player in his day, and I just knew one or two players from out Essendon way. That's the only reason virtually that I took on Essendon. It wasn't over money or anything like that.
The deal, Neville Fields for Terry Daniher and his untried little brother Neil, a handy cricketer and footballer from Assumption College. Daniher had been given another go at the big time, and he knew it was now or never.
I just thought to myself, well, I'm terribly lucky, and I bet this will be my last chance. I better go and make a go of it.
The first thing Daniher came to realise was that the boy from Ungary could play the game at the highest level.
Once you played one or two games, you got a little bit more confidence up, and you just sort of got better as you went. You thought after a while, well, hell, I can mix it with anyone. So, and that's the way it fell into place very well. And along with Neil, he was was untried really. He was up at Assumption College at the time, finishing his final year of school, and I think that it was just going to be a matter of time, because probably Neil, out of all the four boys, he had the most ability.
And grab the opportunity Terry Daniher did, and his motto, simply hard work. So much so that over the years, coach Kevin Sheedy has had to threaten Daniher with fines to stop him from training.
I mean, you don't often say to a guy, look, if you don't stop training, I'm going to fine you. That's probably the only player I've ever done that to, or mentioned it to, or hinted to. But, he really, he knows himself, he knows generally. But when Terry hits a wall, he says, well, the only way out of it's hard work. and that's the way he looks at his life and his football, and that's probably a good quality to have. Sometimes it's just up to a guy in my position, just happens to be the coach, who says maybe you should look at another way and go and have a holiday and, you know, spend a night or two home. And well, that's all right, son, you know, but I know me, and I reckon that this is what I've got to do. And but if you think that, well, I'll consider it later on.
I think Terry probably spends his whole day looking forward to training, and when he gets out on the track, he has at different times he's probably upset Sheeds a little bit, but not because of any other reason except that he's just being himself and enjoying himself and having a good time. And I've never come across anyone in football that enjoys themselves at training as much as Terry does.
But once again, just as things were looking up for the new gun Essendon full forward, another setback when Daniher, playing against his old team, suffered a broken jaw.
Oh, I think it's just one of those things. I think not too many players go through a football career without copping one or two, and it's just a bit of bad luck that I had at the time. But what made it worse was, you know, if you don't play too well in a particular match, and I think you bring the thing on a bit yourself, you get a little bit desperate to get out. I was beaten that particular day, and it was against my old club, South Melbourne, and I was playing on Mark Browning. He'd done a pretty good job on me for most of the match, and I was getting to the stage where I was getting a bit desperate for a kick, and probably went in a little bit harder, and didn't see an arm come up, and the rest is history. I spent 8 weeks out there.
You know, I found him late in my career. I played on him down here, and he chopped me up actually one day. I thought, gee, this kid's going to go somewhere. And then, of course, when I was then I retired not long after, about a year or two, and then as a channel, as a TV observer, I was watching the games, and then unfortunately got his jaw fractured, or cheekbone fractured, probably about 1980, I think it was, and he moved down to the back line probably when I came over there. So I think his first year possibly would have been half back, full back pocket, and he really started playing again a lot better. He had just sort of that mediocre year. He showed a promising full forward at one period, but then he went down, and then of course now he's a very good utility player.
I think you just worry a little bit about the injuries, whether it's mended enough, because you're pretty eager to get back out there and play again, and I think most players will get back try and get back a little bit earlier, and I think it's until you get a couple of knocks on the jaw, you're right after that. Virtually, you soon pick up that bit of confidence that you lost.
And just as Terry Daniher took the knocks that day against the Swans and showed he could come back hard, so too has his courageous brothers. Neil, arguably the most gifted of them all, 3 knee reconstructions. A captain of the club, but never able because of injury to lead his team onto the ground. Anthony, he too sacked by the Swans. And Chris, the youngest, who had his knee reconstructed before he even had a sniff of big-time football. Despite all this, on an atrocious night for football in Sydney, the Daniher clan ran out together for the first time to represent New South Wales against Victoria. Not only was it a magnificent night for the Harbour State defeating the might of Victoria, it was one of the greatest moments in the life of an entire family.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good night. It was a good night for for football up there, really, because it needs a bit of an injection, to get a game like that. And I guess a lot of people sort of treated the game as a bit of a joke. And looking back in hindsight, and probably looking back, we thought, we're under a lot of pressure because we had to perform. We didn't want to have it being such a one-side, just a one-sided event. So there's a lot of butterflies in our gut, I can tell you, before we went out to play that game. But that was a great game, and that was one of the games that'll stay in the back of my mind, for quite some time.
Hungary is quite an amazing sort of place because, they produce 4 league footballers, which is a tremendous effort from a little country town, and not quite often, like you look at all the areas of Australia and you have a good. I've been up there a couple of times, and that for the Danihers to really get their act together by probably watching replays over the years in the 60s and 70s and that, and Jim and Edna to persuade their boys that footy seems to be, the one that they want them to play. And of course, they've got a lot of sisters too, don't forget. And it's been a very interesting family, and a tremendous credit to the whole family, really, not just the boys, but girls, the brothers, sisters, and mum and dad.
And not long after at Moorabbin against St Kilda, the 4 brothers again ran on together for Essendon the first time that four brothers had represented a side in senior AFL football.
It was great to get out there with the four of them. I can still remember running through the banner. I've never even sort of running through the grand final banner last year, but probably not. I didn't know what I was doing. I was in, there's a lot of things happening then, but it just felt great running out there with three brothers.
Good thing for the family, I mean, they played nationally for New South Wales and were tremendous in beating Victoria. And of course for Essendon, who actually is the club that actually recruited the whole four boys eventually and got them together. That was good to see them get out there and play, and they all played quite well, and just unfortunate probably in the end Neil didn't get in that grand final side, and Chrissy did. Played, I think it was his 10th game in a grand final, which is a pretty good effort, but probably looking back, Neil's the one that put so much effort in to try and get there. So I think everybody felt a great deal of admiration from that point of view. Of course, Derry's in the middle, and Anthony soon's playing his 200th game, so they're quite unique.
Family means a lot.